Okay. Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to this event on the sustainable use of pesticides regulation brought to you by the European Food Forum. My name is Natasha Foote. I am an agri-food journalist with Directive. I have the pleasure of moderating today's discussion, which I'm sure will be a lively one given just how contentious this proposal has proven to be. So for those of you who don't know, the European Food Forum is an independent, politically led forum led and governed by elected MEPs. So a big thank you today to our hosting MEPs. That's Clara Aguilera, Frank Bogovic, Alessandra Moretti, Christine Schneider, Michaela Shodrova, and Irene Toleré, who is the newly elected EFF chair. So the EFF aims to promote open stakeholder dialogues on sustainable food systems, and that is exactly what we're here to do today. So let me just give a brief overview of the topic at hand. So in June of last year, the European Commission published its long-awaited proposal on the new sustainable use regulation, the SUR, that will see both the use and risk of chemical plant protection products halved by the end of the decade. So the key points of this proposal has proven highly contentious especially among member states, but also many other stakeholders. So this event is designed to delve deeper into this debate by bringing together institutional, industry, and civil society voices to hear where they stand on the proposal. Now, Food Safety Commissioner Stella Kyriakides has made it clear that as it stands, this is not a take it or leave it proposal, in her words, that the EU executive is open to workable solutions. And we do have a Commission representative here today with us who I'm sure will be all ears with what you have to say. So we're looking to explore all of this and more today with the help of a wealth of expert panelists, but also with you in the audience, both here in the room and also online. This is an interactive event. We do really welcome you to get involved, ask your questions. There will be plenty of opportunity to do so as we go along there. We will have several interventions from speakers as well as 2 panels, and each of these will be followed by a Q&A session. So do keep that in mind as we go along in the event. If you're in the room, you can simply raise your hand, and if for those of you following online, you can also put your questions to our panelists via the chat function, and I will pick those up. We are a little bit tight on time, so I will warn you and keep gently reminding you to be as concise as possible when asking your questions, and the event will also be recorded in case you want to relive the fun all over again. So without further ado, let me hand you over to our MEPs today who are going to be making some opening remarks. Firstly, I will turn to Frank Bogovic for your opening remarks. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you and good morning to everybody. As moderator said, my name is Franz Bogovic. I'm a member of the European Parliament from Slovenia. That's my second term. I am in Agri-Regi Committee and also shadow for SUR in Agri Committee. Otherwise, I'm also agricultural engineer and also apple producer in Slovenia, so I'm close to this team for many years. And as you said, the farm to fork strategy is here, and we debated last year about general farm to fork and now about different regulation, and sustainable use of pesticides is one of exciting file which is here in the European Parliament, and also as we saw in the Council debate. Council at the end of last year asked for impact assessment on food security. This is also one of the challenges which we raised also when we debated in Agri Committee about general farm to fork strategy, that there are cumulative effects of different regulations. This is one of these regulations, and that we don't know what is the altogether impact on the food security. I can say that there is also what is for me very important, that we want, and I fully agree that we need the impact assessment, how it influences on different countries, because we have general 50% reduction of the use of pesticides, but there are big differences between countries. And for example, for my country, Slovenia, from where I am, for example, we have very small farms, 7 hectares, as in many countries, the owners are quite old. And also what is typical for our country, that we have 38% of area which are under Natura. If we add national regional parks, water protection area is more than 50% of surface of Slovenia, which is sensitive area like we have now in the proposal of the Commission. On the other hand, for example, for my country, we have only 860 square meters of arable land per capita. And on the base of the small impact assessment, which made our government, our ministry, 41% of these fields are inside sensitive area. It means some lower production on the fields, also 33% of vineyards, 31% of orchards, olive oil, 1/3 of all this. So that there are many concerns about the topic of sensitive area. What is the next question which we should debate about this is also about bureaucracy, administrative burdens for farmers, also authorities, involvement of advisors. So there are many challenging questions. It's very interesting that in Slovenia we made a lot on these topics, and for example, the use of pesticides is halved if we compare with 25 years ago, or 24% lower than 6-7 years ago. And for example, it's interesting that our beekeepers association, which is very developed, we have 11,000 beekeepers, and in cooperation with them, we banned neonicotinoids 5-6 years before European Union, and they prepared proposals, not how to ban many things, but what we can do in next years that this will continue. We, for example, had no murder of bees in last 11-12 years because of pesticides, and they want to work in cooperation. So I think that also these debates and also all debates which will be in future should be debate how cooperate, how to go towards this goal. And in this regulation, I think that there are many things which are based on ban many things, and I'm not sure if this is the right way. So we start with new CAP. There are many measures which we'll start to introduce, and I hope that all these good practices, which we will saw for sure also today, are practices and show the direction in which we must go. I'm sure that in Europe we will reduce use of pesticides in next years, what is necessary, but I'm not sure that we will reduce on this way like was in the basic proposal of Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those remarks, giving a good overview of some of the big issues here that we'll delve in deeper today. I'd now like to pass the floor to Alessandra Moretti for some opening remarks. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Let me first thank Luisella for organizing this event today and all our panelists. Indeed, I think it's particularly important and useful to have an open discussion with you on this proposal, which has generated an intense debate even before its publication. As a member of the ENVI committee, it's therefore my intention to follow this debate closely. While we all agree on the need to reduce the use of pesticides in order to make the agricultural sector more sustainable and safer, I'm wondering whether the sector is ready to meet these challenges and in particular to reach the ambitious reduction targets set in the proposal. A more sustainable agriculture is first of all beneficial for the farmers themselves. In fact, we cannot accept that their health is put in danger by the use of harmful substances. Secondly, it's our duty as politicians to protect our consumers by ensuring that the products that end up on our table are safe. The current proposal sets very ambitious reduction targets, which penalize some countries more than others. Ensuring a level playing field is therefore essential. I also think that we should call for a more gradual phase out of these substances. Another critical point of the proposal, in my opinion, concerns the proposed definition of sensitive areas, since, as currently formulated, risks to put the sector in great difficulty. Another critical aspect is concerns the alternatives available on the market. Without real and concrete alternatives to the current products, it will be very difficult to reach the proposed targets, and ultimately we will not be able to achieve the objectives we had hoped for. I'm sure this debate will be a good opportunity to discuss the critical issues that I have briefly identified, and I'm sure that the panelists will provide us with new useful insights for the debate that we will face in Parliament in the coming weeks. Thank you for attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we certainly hope we will have lots of useful insights, as you said. So I'll just take the moment to inform everyone in the audience that Green MEP Sarah Wiener, who is the rapporteur on this revision for ENVI, is unfortunately not able to participate in the event today because of prior commitments, but she asked me to say that the event was very relevant for her work and she would have loved to be involved. So there we go. And I'd now like to open up the floor to our first panel session today. We'll hear from each of our speakers, and then there will be an opportunity for a short Q&A session, so keep that in mind as we're going along. And for this panel session, I'd also like to welcome up to the stage Heinz-Joachim Hofer, who's an MEP and a rapporteur on the SUR. We also have with us Clara Aguilera to my left and Christine Schneider to my right. So Clara, let me start with you with your, maybe you could set the scene and your position on this SUR.
Buenos días. Voy a hablar en mi idioma, en español. Muchas gracias por la invitación y felicitar a Luisela, que siempre desde el European Food Forum nos lleva a todos corriendo hacia los debates de actualidad, como es este, sin duda, el que tenemos hoy aquí. Así que muchas gracias a todos por participar. Sin duda el debate, para mí como para el resto de diputados implicados en este tema, va a ser muy interesante y seguramente muy productivo y todos aprenderemos. Bueno, estamos ante una propuesta derivada de la estrategia de la granja a la mesa, como ha dicho Fran, del Pacto Verde Europeo, y que entre la producción agrícola, tengo que decir, es más controvertida. Es decir, tanto la disminución de fitosanitarios como fertilizantes o antibióticos son objetivos del Pacto Verde Europeo y de la estrategia que todos debemos cumplir, y quiero dejar claro mi compromiso con los objetivos del Pacto Verde, pero sin duda son lo que a nivel de la producción, tanto agraria como ganadera, han generado mayor controversia. Decir también de entrada que no sé si se ha explicado bien esto, no ya la disminución de uso, si se ha explicado bien la necesidad del Pacto Verde, todos estos objetivos, la sociedad cada vez más preocupada por la repercusión en el medio ambiente que pueden tener los fitosanitarios o los modelos productivos agrícolas o ganaderos, si se ha explicado suficientemente para poder tener de aliado al sector agrario. Mi opinión es que no. Y creo que ahí el principal error es de la Comisión Europea. Y seguramente, a continuación, el de todos los demás, incluidos los diputados. Es decir, estas cosas hay que explicarlas bien porque significan un cambio y una transición ecológica muy importante, y que si nos unimos todos, es difícil llevarlo a cabo. Es difícil llevarlo a cabo. Por tanto, la alianza con los agricultores y ganaderos europeos es muy importante. Si no, esto no llevará al éxito. Fracasaremos todos. Por lo tanto, creo que ahí, en primer lugar, la culpa muchas veces es las explicaciones de no haber a lo mejor explicado o haber cogido las alianzas adecuadas para explicar estas situaciones. Por tanto, mi primera declaración, estoy de acuerdo con los objetivos del reglamento de disminución de pesticidas, de fitosanitarios, nos gusta decir más en España, no nos gusta nada el pesticida, lo que significa en España es un elemento peyorativo. De fitosanitarios, el uso, por supuesto, de aquellos peligrosos, evidentemente. ¿Quién va a querer usarlos? ¿Quién va a querer alimentación que pueda estar usado o tratado así? ¿Quién va a querer tener un elemento que pueda tener una incidencia negativa en el medio ambiente? Por supuesto, mi compromiso. Ahora bien, tenemos que ver cómo se hace esto y no es fácil, porque significa cambios de modelos productivos. Quiero decir que no empezamos de cero, que a veces parece como que aquí no hemos hecho nada. Hace años que se empezó con la producción integrada, la gestión de plagas, es decir, integrada de plagas, que ha funcionado probablemente una valoración intermedia. Probablemente sea muy mejorable la gestión integrada de plagas y donde haya que incidir especialmente para mejorar ese sistema de gestión integrada de plagas. Por tanto, hay que mejorar de los aspectos que ya teníamos en la directiva sustantivamente. Ahora bien, en la propuesta de reglamento quiero destacar algunos elementos que lanzo al debate y que yo entiendo que son bastante mejorables y creo que en algunos casos no son adecuados. Por ejemplo, en primer lugar me quiero centrar en la zona sensible. Tratamiento y la consideración de la zona sensible. La definición, las definiciones que se hacen a cabo, artículo 3 y el artículo 18, la prohibición total. Bueno, yo creo que esto habría que mejorarlo. Bueno, ya la comisión, no sé cómo debemos considerar el non-paper, todo lo no oficial es una voluntad, pero nada más. Lo que hay escrito en la propuesta. Y habla de prohibición. A lo mejor sería más adecuado la restricción. Yo creo que ahí la propuesta de zonas sensibles para mí está equivocada. Y creo que habría que trabajar en esas definiciones de zonas, en meter todas estas zonas y desde luego una consideración que yo creo que no se ha tenido, que es por un lado las zonas agrícolas y por otro lado las zonas públicas. Son absolutamente diferentes. Por un lado, el tratamiento que dan los profesionales y el uso de los profesionales a los no profesionales. Por tanto, tiene que haber una diferenciación clara, porque si yo creo que ha habido una extensión es por el uso no profesional y en áreas públicas que han hecho muchas instituciones públicas. Y por lo tanto eso hay que corregirlo inmediatamente. No es lo mismo una zona agrícola con un tratamiento hecho por un profesional y gestionado por un técnico profesional de una gestión integrada de plagas asesorado, que una zona pública con un tratamiento, bueno, que el ayuntamiento o el gestor de turno aconseja y que coge el producto más barato comercialmente. No sé si a lo mejor es más lesivo, pero más barato. Pues pudiera ser. Por lo tanto, ahí nos hace división y yo creo que es un elemento para mí importante. Zonas agrícolas, zonas públicas. Por lo tanto, para mí es controvertido la definición que se hace en las zonas públicas y las zonas sensibles que se consideran dentro de ellas. Y la prohibición total. Yo hablaría de restricción, porque a lo mejor no en todas las zonas hay que llegar a la prohibición total. Es una opinión que lanzo al debate. Unido con la distinción que digo de zonas agrícolas y zonas públicas. Y luego, por supuesto, Europa es enorme y nada tiene que ver el norte, el centro con el sur. Ni en clima, ni en modelo productivo, ni en productos. Y por lo tanto, cuando tú haces una media en los objetivos, que esa es la segunda cuestión, los objetivos nacionales de reducción, que son 2 objetivos, en mi opinión, y lo digo claro, arbitrarios, de cumplimiento y difícil de casar con la media europea. Se ha referido Fran también. En mi opinión hay un aspecto que nada tiene que ver ni por clima, ni por temperatura, ni otro aspecto. El sur de donde yo soy, de Andalucía, de la área mediterránea, con el centro o con el norte del Báltico. Y por lo tanto, si zonificamos una única zona, Europa, es muy complicado hacer un objetivo de reducción. A lo mejor habría que hacer 2 o 3 zonas para que tuviese un mayor equilibrio. Por tanto, en cuanto a los objetivos que se les exige a los países, es decir, esos objetivos tanto de uso, intensidad, como la evolución de la reducción, creo que también habría que verlos. Probablemente, mi opinión, creo que son algo arbitrarios y creo que hay elementos que se podrían corregir dentro de ellos. Y hay unas medias que se ponen sobre esos años. Creo que los datos, evidentemente, no hay datos actualizados. La normativa de datos para usar en este reglamento está ahora mismo llevándose a cabo y, por lo tanto, necesitamos datos reales, por supuesto, y son muy importantes para tomar las decisiones de cara al futuro. En tercer lugar, me quería referir a la carga administrativa de los Estados miembros. No me preocupa tanto que haya más trabajo o menos, que eso evidentemente no ayuda, pero sí me preocupa ahora mismo cada cultivo tiene una guía de uso de esos fitosanitarios. Si esa guía de cultivo de uso de fitosanitarios de cada cultivo, una guía tiene que tener un tratamiento normativo específico, o sea, un decreto, un real decreto, significa una tramitación de 10 meses, al menos en mi país, por cultivo. No sé, ahí creo que también es susceptible de mejorar algunos aspectos. Y luego la financiación. Hombre, aquí la PAC sirve para todo, no sé. No sé si el presupuesto de la política agrícola va a servir para todo. Entre otras cosas, porque hay una desintonía entre el Plan Estratégico Nacional que acabamos de terminar, que acaba de aprobar la Comisión, que ha entrado en vigor el 1 de enero de 2023, con una planificación hecha por unos reglamentos, por 3 reglamentos, y ahora le estamos diciendo a los estados, cuando esto se apruebe, que hagan un plan de acción nacional de reducción de pesticidas que a lo mejor no tiene nada que ver con la BECAN 8, la BECAN 7 o no sé qué. O diferente. ¿Qué hacemos? ¿Cambiamos los reglamentos de la PAC? Es decir, ahí hay un presupuesto y un compromiso de objetivos de los estados miembros en los planes estratégicos nacionales. Nos guste más o menos, reglamentos aprobados y programas y planes estratégicos nacionales. ¿Y ahora cómo vamos a revertir? En algunos casos será más fácil, en otros no tanto. Por lo tanto, ahora sí, la financiación ni un euro más. A ver si quito de este programa, mejoro la apuesta energética y ahora me invento otra cosa, lo quito de la PAC e intervengo en el mundo digital o ahora la reducción de pesticidas. Y todo bajo el mismo saco, la política agrícola común. Por cierto, termino inmediatamente. Por cierto, presupuesto que no se actualiza con la inflación desde el año 2000. Desde el año 2000. Y ahora estamos en un periodo de inflación grande y por lo tanto los presupuestos no son los mismos. Y estamos hablando en el Parlamento de un cuestionamiento del marco financiero plurianual porque no está adaptado a la realidad. Estos son algunos de los elementos, hay otras muchas cosas. Encantada del debate posterior y de escucharles a todos, porque veo que aquí hay gente que sabe mucho de estas cosas y yo seguramente aprenderé con todos ustedes. Gracias.
Thank you very much for that, Clara. Christine, let me turn to you now. Clara raised a lot of issues there, a lot of concerns. Do you echo these concerns? What is your viewpoint on this matter?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you, Clara, for the clear statement. And I can underline some things also. But at first, I want to thank Luisella to organize against this event. So thank you so much for your work in the EFF. Thank you so much, Luisella. I will set a slightly different focus than the other speakers, because I'm the EPP shadow rapporteur of the nature restoration law. And you certainly know it's the part of the EU nature conservation package together with the SUR. Clara spoke about it. Often the two laws are considered separately. However, I find this very difficult. To put it simple, the SUR determines what will still be allowed in the future, and the nature restoration law determines where it will be still allowed. So you cannot consider one without the other. We all want to achieve the goals of the European Green Deal, and we also agree that we need to protect our biodiversity. However, well meant is not always well done. I hear many worries and fears from my farmers and cannot understand them, and I can understand them very well. And I can understand them emotionally very well. After all, we are talking about their houses and farms that have often been in familiarity for decades. And my role as member of the European Parliament, I therefore also trying to communicate those fears to the European Commission and to the rapporteurs of these both very important files. Let me underline one point. Our wine growers and our farmers will continue to need sufficient land to feed our population and a functioning toolbox to fight pests and disease. And anyone who says otherwise is closing their eyes to the reality. In my view, the European Commission proposal overshots the mark by far and cannot be implemented in this way. Above all, we will destroy existing economic sectors and make ourselves even more dependent on imports from third countries with lower environmental and social standards. In addition, there's also a massive breach of trust, because it was promised that the designation of protected areas would not lead to any management restrictions. The ban in protected areas is like deciding today that only 50% of prescription drugs may be administered to people. Of course, like the majority of the profession, I'm committed to a sustainable reduction of plant protection products. However, there must be viable alternatives. Otherwise, how we or our farmers can fight disease and pests. Reducing the use of plant protection products while taking food security into account is the right thing to do, but blanket bans are the wrong way to go. For me, the right way is for nature conservation and land management to work together. One does not exclude the other, and the individual types of protected areas should not be played off against each other. Clearly, the third step was taken before the first. The task of policies is to set realistic guidelines and to create planning security. Unfortunately, in my view, neither is the case here. The Commission was obviously not aware of the effects in the individual member states. If the Commission had carried out a comprehensive impact assessment, As we have always demanded in the Farm to Fork strategy, the effect on the management would have been clear before an unworkable proposal was put on the table. With the proposal, as it is currently on the table, agriculture and viniculture in protected areas will be extremely limited or no longer be possible. This will deprive existing industries of their basis for operation and make us dependent, I said it, on imports from third countries with lower environmental and social standards. Currently, there is already movement in this process. Carla underlines it. According to a non-paper, the European Commission is already backing away from the total ban on the use of plant protection products in sensitive areas due to the massive criticism of the proposal. Plant protection products approved for a use in organic farming are to continue to permit it in these areas. However, this would continue to deprive conventional agriculture of its basis for cultivation. In addition, the member states should have the possibility to allow the use of low-risk products in sensitive areas in order to promote an incentive for the introduction and research of alternative products. In my opinion, however, this still does not go far enough. It is totally impractical to ban things before you have real alternatives. Moreover, this proposal would lead to a patchwork quilt, and the consequence would be disorigin of competitions that would endanger our food security in the European Union. There must be no playing off an organic against conventional agriculture. And in my view, the non-paper is not yet a compromise, but it shows that our work is already bearing fruit. The European Commission seems to have realized that the proposal cannot be implemented in practice. The reduction targets could be achieved if we allow new breeding techniques and promote digital farming so that treatment is only carried out where there is actually disease or pest infestation. We also need faster and simpler approval procedures for new and less harmful plant protection products. I wish everyone a pleasant discussion and new insight for our discussions on the political level. So thank you so much for invitation and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Christine. Heinz, Joachim, let me turn to you now. We've been hearing a lot. I think most speakers have expressed that they're okay with the kind of objectives of what we're trying to set out here, but clearly there are a lot of concerns with the way that it's set out to do this. Do you share this concern? What are your viewpoints on this?
Thank you, Natasha. Dear members of the European Parliament and representatives of the European Commission, dear experts and dear participants. As the rapporteur for the European COR opinion on the sustainable use of pesticides, I'm delighted to attend this event. The COR fully supports the binding targets for reducing the use and the risks of pesticides in line with the objective of the Farm to Fork strategy. Already in 2018, in our opinion on common agricultural policy, we proposed quantified environmental targets to be achieved by 2027 by all the member states, and in particular, reducing the use of pesticides by at least 30% compared to 2017 levels. Last year, we deplored, in our opinion on safeguarding food security, the instrumentalization of the war in Ukraine as a reason for calling into question Farm to Fork strategy targets. Indeed, the Solar Cut project, presented in December at the European Parliament and supported by Ms. Clara Aguilera, clearly shows that there are many examples of pests that cannot be controlled by chemical pesticides anymore, since they have become totally resistant. Then biological control is the only effective tool remaining for intensive production systems as greenhouses. If we want to produce more for ensuring food security, biological control is the solution. Moreover, reducing pesticides use would make farms better able to cope with the economic, energy, and environmental crises, as these pesticides are now very expensive. At global level also, in its May 2022 report on the EU response to the Russia's war in Ukraine, the Center of European Policy Studies states that the available data do not suggest that sustainable food production standards should be lowered, and lowering standards could lead to environmental costs and exacerbate price volatility. That's why, in our opinion, on the sustainable use of pesticides adopted last week during our committee meeting, at a large majority, the COR strongly recommends to reduce the use and risk of chemical pesticides to better fight against pests, help farmers to become more resilient, and to protect our health, our environment, and our biodiversity. But local and regional authorities' requests are more demanding than the EC proposal on the protection of health and biodiversity. We want that more emphasis be placed on determining the toxicity of the plant protection products used instead of focusing on the quantity. We recommend to focus on the most dangerous pesticides rather than on the quantities applied. To revise the evaluation procedure and the indicators for pesticides by the EFSA in order to take into account cocktail effects and resistance. To set a buffer zone of 10 meters around sensitive areas instead of 3 meters as initially proposed by the European Commission. To prohibit imports and products treated with unauthorized pesticides. To prohibit sale and use of the most dangerous pesticides by non-professionals. To plan a monitoring of pesticides-related occupational diseases. Of course, our farmers must be supported in this transition to sustainable farming. We regret the fact that the national strategic plans lack ambition when it comes to reducing the quantities of pesticides and, above all, their risks. And we hope that the national action plans on pesticides will be more ambitious. These plans should be transmitted to the European Commission for carry-out ex post monitoring assisted by a group of independent experts. To conclude, I would like to say that local and regional authorities are very active, taking measures to address biodiversity loss and protect nature, and that include activities to reverse the decline of pollinator populations or actions to promote sustainable farming, which works with the environment, biodiversity, and safeguards the climate. We hope that our efforts can be further recognized and that resources and tools are deployed to support our work. As the rapporteur of the European Committee of the Regions opinion on the sustainable use of pesticides, I undertake to continue the support of the binding targets for reducing the use of pesticides in line with the objectives of the Farm to Fork strategy. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for that. We are a little bit tight on time, but I would like to throw out into the audience to see if there is a quick question for any of our panelists. Yes, the first hand was up there. Yes, you can take the floor.
Thank you. Natalia Svrtan, Pesticide Action Network Europe. I have a question for MEP Moretti regarding the statement.
She's unfortunately not here.
Okay.
Could you direct it to another panelist?
Yes, Mr. Bogovic. During the ECI, I think you were present there, you could have heard that 739 scientists signed a joint statement stating that sustainable use regulation pose no threat to food security. And there are many studies that show that agroecology is the long-term viable a system that ensures food security. And also that pesticides destroy biodiversity, which is the base of the food production. And claims that there are no alternatives to pesticides have no ground because there are many alternatives. There are studies that prove and support the statement. And there are also scientists and farmers who prove that there are viable alternatives to synthetic pesticides. So my question is, are you and your colleagues willing to work with interested parties, which are scientists and organizations who are willing to provide knowledge and expertise to have a 50% reduction implemented in sustainable use regulation? And also a quick remark on sensitive areas.
Extremely quick, please, if you can.
Okay, we agree, IPM with the biocontrol and the products that are used in organic farming are really sufficient to have a proper control in sensitive areas. Thank you.
Yes, I read about this study, and the basic question which we raised as Agri Committee to Commission is to prepare impact assessment on food security. And these questions which are here as new solutions which exist, I work quite a lot on these topics of precision farming and others, like new genomic technologies. And the basic question is, as Ms. Schneider said, are these steps right, or we did step 3 before step 1? And I think what is necessary now to have clear impact assessment, as I said, on food security, also affordability for people. We see the rise of price of food. We all know that the use of organic products is higher, the price is also higher, and there are limits how much people can buy at each moment. And now we also see in some countries that there is not enough consumers to use, for example, organic milk in France. So making balance all these things. What is also for me very important, I work quite a lot on this precision farming technique, and I read also Hennigan study, which make a combined impact assessment on all regulatives, all goals in farm to fork strategy, and it is different on big farms and small farms. And my concern is, if we will not ensure enough conditions for small farmers, that we will kill them through over-regulation. And the goal for biodiversity for other things is to have also enough small farmers. As I said, in my country, there is 7 hectares average. And perhaps big farmers and big company, which we have in Europe, can ensure all this technique at that time, but I'm not sure for all others. So I think that we must go in this direction and have the right speed and make the right steps at that time. That's our concern.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Sadly, we don't have time for any more questions. Thank you. And I would remind everyone when posing your questions to just be as concise as you can, stick to questions and not statements. Thank you very much. So I would now like to close this panel session. So thank you very much to all of our panelists here. And I will now like to open the next panel session where we will be listening to some case studies about different challenges and opportunities. Now, our speakers will be joining us online. We'll have with us today Betty Annan, who is the country director in Ghana of the World Cacao Foundation, and also Alexander Flick, who is an expert on all things viticulture and wine. So we'll firstly be hearing from Betty. Hopefully she'll be popping up on your screens any minute now. And she will talk us through her experience from Ghana. I think we're just trying to get the connection here. Yeah. Excellent. So,
good morning.
there we go. Wonderful, thank you. Betty, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the opportunity to speak at such an important event. From my perspective, I believe that having access to the right quantities of food or adequate food is a basic need for humans. I mean, food that is healthy as well, or what is required to keep a human being healthy is a basic necessity. Majority of the world's countries that are considered to be poor as far as income levels are concerned and are also deficient in food production of food are located here in Africa. However, the production systems that we have are sometimes so rudimentary and requires the use of agrochemicals to be able to, or extensive technology to be able to produce the right quantities. There is scarcity of food. The global report on food crisis as of 2022 indicated that in Africa, at least 1 in every 5 people go to bed hungry. We are also faced with challenges of climate change, such as droughts and floods, and therefore there is the need to intensify production across the sub-Saharan region, of which Ghana is one. The COVID pandemic and the Russian-Ukrainian war has also added to high prices of food and even lower accessibility and affordability of the food that we eat. To meet these demands, there is the need to be able to have systems in place that would require the use of agrochemicals, pesticides to help control insect infestation and diseases, as well as weeds to improve the yield. Small-scale producers, particularly, let me give an example in Ghana, might not even have access to agrochemicals to help increase their productivity. I would say the levels of contaminants in food that we buy on the local markets might not be measured or are hardly measured, and therefore we may end up with high level of residue levels in foods that are sold on the local market. But this might not be the same case for products or produce that is exported to countries such as Europe or to European Union because of the requirements and because of some of these legislations, such as helping to reduce, improve the sustainable use of pesticides. Definitely, there is the need to use agrochemicals in production in Africa, especially when it comes to commercial productivity. For local production or small-scale production, it might not be the case. But if we want to ensure that farmers see it as a business, then definitely they need to use pesticides. But to what extent do we even have access to such chemicals? And to what extent is it affordable? Reviewing the pesticide use or revision of the sustainable use of pesticide is requiring the use of integrated pest management techniques. This might not be extensive for producers here in Africa or specifically Ghana. How do we get this to make sure that farmers are trained, advisors, distributors along the value chain of the agricultural productivity are trained to be able to help the farmers to comply? If we are looking at exports, definitely there is the need to build capacity. To what extent are we going to support the building of capacity and helping to develop the expertise of people to be able to comply with these requirements? Most countries that are within the African sub-region that export are required to meet certification requirements. Certification and then maximum residual levels. To what extent are we supporting, or how would this affect productivity in our countries as well as exports? definitely not having pesticides for production, particularly at the commercial level, would result in poor quality and even the poor appearance of food. But when we talk about human health, is of paramount importance. When we talk about environmental health, is of paramount importance. Biodiversity conservation. So how do we break the gap? How do we ensure that in revising the sustainable use of pesticides, we are able to also take care of enough food or have enough food produced for citizens or for human life. There are challenges definitely that comes with affordability of food. At the primary level, definitely the use of revised technology or integrated pest management, or even going into organic production, which would require more, I would say, human or hands-on production activities, would mean that the price or the input that is used at the basic level for production definitely would increase. How would this be translated into the cost or the price of food that is purchased? High cost of primary production would definitely result in high level or price increases. How would this be compensated for? At the local level, I don't know, but at the international level for export, would there be a shift or a change in pricing that will reflect the changes that will take place at the primary production level? There are a lot of benefits, definitely, that some of us have been preview to observe. Sustainable use of pesticides that produces a lot of good health benefits, which cannot be overemphasized. Less residual levels in food, which keeps us more healthier, and also keeps the environment healthier. Preservation of biodiversity, less contamination of water bodies, less eutrophication, less seepage into aquifers. There are opportunities as well for new technologies and scientific research that will lead to discoveries. And this would mean business opportunities for other companies, which would bring in more money for them. Farming technologies such as precision agriculture and digital farming would increase with the revision of the sustainable use of pesticides. How are these going to be translated into countries where production is basic? Production is, rudimentary. How would this affect some of us? Production here is characterized by...
just ask you to wrap up that point, if you could. We're running a little bit short on time. If you could just wrap up that thought. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would say that overall, personally, I believe that there is the need to revise or keep the revision, but also take into account how third countries can comply with these revisions. Yes, we are all careful about health and the environment. So please, my submission would be, how do we ensure that measures taken would result in environmentally sound production, good health, and productivity increases for third countries? Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing your perspective there. I would now like to pass the floor to Alexander, who I'm very much hoping is online and ready to join. Hopefully should be popping up on the screen. Or not.
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yes, there we go. Great, thank you. Alexander, the floor is yours. If I can ask you to keep to your time and be as concise as you can. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for inviting me to the EFF meeting, and thanks for organizing, Luisella. I'm giving you a short overview of what is happening with the directive of the sustainable use of pesticides in my region, in my native Germany. I'm a wine grower, and people here are very, very concerned about this because, as Mrs. Schneider already said, there is the restoration law as well, which will prohibit our use of pesticides in protected areas. Where I come from, nearly a third of production is within protected land areas. All river valleys, the Rhine, the Moselle, the Aar, are protected areas. We would have a devaluation and a very, very big change in landscape if the cessation of pesticides would stand as is. So why is that? We have a landscape that is man-made for our structures, but the flora and fauna has adapted to it. So we have a lot of species living there, and we have a lot of tourism that comes to the regions because, especially of the landscape. Why is going organic not feasible? This is in part of the point system that is applied to all pesticides, especially in the vineyard areas. So if you have the pests that are buggering us year by year, you have to use a certain amount of pesticides. Also, all organic pesticides are classified as well. So just switching to organic wouldn't solve our problem. We would have a big devaluation of land. We would have a big effect for small farms, and wineries tend to be small. And I can speak from my experience. We have vineyards in 3 sub-regions of Rheinhessen, which are all 20 kilometers apart. But still, all vineyard areas would be affected by a ban on pesticides in protected areas. I give you a short example. There is a big vineyard which has been replanted in the past years. It was a project of land consolidation funded with money from the EOLA funds and a lot of regional funds. There is a bird living there, and there were many measures taken to protect this bird and to recreate the environment. It was a lot of work put into that. And there are a lot of wineries invested in this vineyard site. And nearly, I think, a third of them is already farming organically. But still, if this measure was to stand, the whole site would go out of production. It would just become a bushland because you couldn't use it for any other agricultural purposes. And this is a really big problem in, especially Germany and Austria and Tyrol as well, because vineyards are a permanent culture, and you have to take measures against pests. On the other side, the industry, the wine business, has come a long way already. So there are a lot of measures in place for professionals to get schooling, to acquire their passes for using pesticides. And we will continue this way. So the wine business is not opposing all regulation or all measures, but we want to work. And like Mrs. Schneider and pointed out, we need the assessment of how it would affect our region and how it would affect all the small farms, the landscape, and the environment as such, if this was to go through. And we need to work with the industry. There have been.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alexandra. Sorry, I'll have to ask you to finish that, wrap up that point. Maybe one last line, wrapping up your thoughts, then we'll have to move on.
There have been already successful projects in Germany regarding biodiversity in viticultural areas. There was a big dispute in Baden, where they worked with the beekeeper association, with the all the NGOs, to create a system that is feasible for everybody. And I would like to really emphasize work with the people, work with the stakeholders here. We are open to everything, but you can't just take away what has been cultivated for centuries.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you for those reflections and bringing your perspectives to this discussion today. So I'd now like to turn straight to our next panel session. And to do so, I'd like to ask our panelists here maybe to take a seat. And I'd like to invite up here our next panelists. So we have with us today Eduardo Cuoco, who's the director at IFOAM Europe. That's the EU's Organic Association. We have Olivier de Matos, who is Director General of CropLife Europe, who represents the EU crop protection industry. We also have Jennifer Lewis, who is Executive Director at IBMA Global, works on biocontrol, and Eva Corral, who is a Senior Policy Officer on Pesticide and Water Pollution at the European Environmental Bureau. So we're just going to have a minute while we get everyone seated here on the stage. Okay, thank you. So let's set the scene firstly. I'll turn to each of our panelists in turn to hear a little bit about their reflections on what we've heard so far and their point of view on the proposal as it stands. So perhaps Eduardo, I can turn to you first. I would ask you to keep as concise as you can. You can have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Natasha. I was trying to negotiate at least 7 minutes, but seems there is no possibility. So thank you, Natasha. Thank you, Luisella. Thank you to all of you for being here today to give me the possibility to address you about the SUR. I'm the director of IFOAM Organics Europe, representing the organic supply chain. And we believe that the SUR represents really a great opportunity, a lifetime opportunity to make our food system more sustainable and to reach the objective of the farm to fork on reducing of pesticide. We have this unique opportunity to protect our environment, the health of our citizens, and moreover, the health of our farming community. The farming community has been told for decades that the only way to produce was with the use of pesticide. And it's very difficult to manage a change. It's very emotional. But we all know that this change is needed. We need to make sure that the farming community has really the right tools to make this change possible. I would like to zoom out 1 second from the legislation. I mean, the legislation is there. We need to accompany the legislation with clear support for farmers. Farmers are not the problem, they are the solution. We need to make sure they are supported in that by having good advisory services, independent from the agribusiness, that can support really the transition towards more agronomic practices that are more sustainable. And then secondly, really be taught how agronomic farming practices can support this transition. And then third, we need indeed alternatives. We need to provide farmers with a toolbox that helps them to face the challenges they do daily. And we believe that alternatives are to be found in natural substances. We are using natural substances in organic for very long now. They have proven tool to combat disease and pests. And we believe this legislation has the unique opportunity, Madame Aguilera, has the unique opportunity to really make sure that we can have a dedicated and different registration system for natural substances. It should be quicker, it should be ad hoc for this kind of substance that we have there. But we also need a clear definition of what is synthetic pesticide products and what is natural occurring substances products. And we need research and innovation to continue developing natural substances that can be used indeed in organic, but in the overall agricultural sector. Now, let me say that we also have some concern about this legislation. Two main concerns I would like to address you today. The first one is about the use of the HR1 indicator. This is an indicator that is volume-based and not, dose-based. So it's not giving a real understanding of the quantity of pesticide that is used into the farms. We have a study from Austria which is showing that if we treat scab in apples, we will use about 8 kilos of bicarbonate towards 6 grams, wait, let me check, versus 800 grams of nicotinoids. So if you look at the volumes, it's indeed, wow, 8 kilo of bicarbonates, but bicarbonates is low risk substance, It's a natural fungicide, and there's indeed a completely different impact on the environment and on the health. It's also easy to degrade compared to nicotinoids. Another, I'm still in the 5 minutes? That's good. Another point I would like to raise, it's, wait, what is it? Yeah, I mean, I will go to the next one. I mean, another point I wanted to make is about we discussed a lot about sensitive areas today. I mean, it's clear that we need to ban chemical substances from sensitive areas. We do support this line of the Commission. We do support this line of the Commission because it's where we need to act the most. We need to protect our environment. We need to protect the health of our citizens. And we believe that the alternative, a compromise, could be the use of those natural substances that are in the annex of organic regulation to be allowed in the sensitive areas. This might be a compromise that might allow to still use agricultural area in sensitive areas in production, but still making sure that the substances used are degraded and are not a threat for the citizen and for the farmers. We also talked, I think it's interesting, we talked with the drinkable water organizations, the one protecting, the drinkable water resource. And they all agree that, the use of organic substances might be the solution to cover agriculture in these areas. So to conclude my 5 minutes, I think this is a generational opportunity. We must use this opportunity to regulate the use and the reduction of synthetic pesticide in Europe. The Parliament, the Member States, the stakeholders, we really have a unique opportunity to discuss together and see the way forward. We have the opportunity to be remembered for those who took the right decision in the right moment. So really work on the reduction of synthetic pesticide, or to the one who are not realistic enough to see that it's time for change. So my call today is really, let's be realistic. This is something we need to do. Let's be realistic. We need to have the right tools. We need to guide our farmers toward this agroecological transition. We have to do it all together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. And as you touched upon such technical areas versus use versus risk, perhaps it makes sense to turn to you, Olivier, now for your remarks on what you've heard so far today and your position. So I'll ask you to be as concise as you can. Thank you.
Thanks, Natasha. And thanks for the invitation to share our perspective today. And thank you, Luisella, for the organization too. I'd like to start by saying that CropLife Europe represents a sector that actually supplies solutions, integrated solutions and complementary solutions and innovation to farmers so that they can protect their crops. And that basically covers 4 main areas. We're talking about conventional pesticides, biopesticides, plant biotechnology, and also digital and precision agriculture. I would also like to start by saying that the objectives of the Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy are supported by our sector. And we know that there is a need to transform the way we produce food. They know that there is a need to go towards a transformation that Eduardo was talking about. Sometimes we may actually differ on the ways on how to get there. The first thing is that we believe that farmers need to have access to a wide range of tools, a wide range of solutions so they can protect their crops and they can also get into this transition in an efficient way. We also believe that innovation is an important aspect of it. Our members in their 2030 commitments invested, just to give an example, committed to invest 40 billion euros in biopesticides and digital and precision agriculture. And we've already invested 4 billion since the adoption of the commitments, 4 billion euros on these 2 new technologies. So that is a commitment that we have on that field. But there are also other investments that were made and other commitments that were adopted. One of the great things about the SUR is that it recognizes innovation, recognizes the need for innovation, and it also has IPM as a cornerstone. IPM is an important part for us to get to the objectives that we are setting to each other, whether it's with the SUR, but also with other legislations that are related to food production. As I said, it is important for farmers to have access to all solutions that are available, all of them. Without that, if we start excluding solutions as opposed to or opposing solutions to each other, we're not going to get there. So we need to get together and work together and consider all solutions that are made available. There is also a need for that, that is quick access to innovation. One of the challenges, we're talking about challenges in the title of this panel, one of the challenges that we have and the farmers have is the quick access for innovation. There is a need to have an appropriate regulatory framework that basically makes or ensures a quick access to innovation to all solutions, whether we're talking about new conventional pesticides or whether we're talking about biopesticides or even plant biotechnology, NGTs in that respect. But also some models that foster the use of digital and precision agriculture. We are talking a lot about it, but there is also a need to concretely invest in this, and our sector is also part and is also investing in that respect. I think there is, and I'm going to conclude with that, there is, besides the quick access to innovation, I think there is a need for all of us to realize that this is a collective effort. We all need to work together. All actors have to be involved. All actors have to sit around the table and also consider, as I said, all available solutions. That's the only way we're going to get there. 2030 is tomorrow, so we need to act quick. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Olivier. I'd now like to turn to you, Eva. Maybe you can bring us back to basics here a little bit. Talk about why is it exactly we need to reduce the use of pesticides, and maybe you can give your reflections on what you've heard today.
Yes. So, honorable members of the Parliament, Mesdames, Messieurs, first of all, I want to thank you for having invited me here today, and I'm very grateful to be here in an open discussion, and I do agree with a number of things that Madame Aguilera has put on the table. Okay, yes.
There we go.
So, the regulation on the sustainable use of pesticides is going to bring benefit to all of us and progress to the whole society. It is going to better protect the health of farmers, farm workers, citizens in general, including children. It is going to protect pollinators, and it's going to protect agricultural soils. But some actors are putting on the table of the debate issues that either don't belong here or are untrue. A discussion about food affordability to consumers does not belong here. It belongs, like a discussion about prices paid to farmers, on an exchange about the food chain. The question of prices paid to farmers is not related to the war in Ukraine. There is no food availability or food security problem in the European Union. Actually, according to the Drivers of Food Security report of the Commission, the European Union is largely self-sufficient for key agricultural products and achieves a stable overall food export supply. Therefore, it is very important to understand what is really at stake here. And largely what is at stake is the respect and application of the law. Integrated pest management means applying the law. Integrated pest management has been mandatory for farmers since 2014. Contrary to what some say, the Sustainable Use Regulation is not quite a brand new piece of legislation. It intends largely to solve the implementation problems of the Sustainable Use Directive, many of which have been pointed out by the Court of Auditors. For example, the need to clarify what is IPM and the need to put in place mechanisms to be able to verify that it is being applied. This is proposed in the SUR proposal via electronic registers to make it easier for farmers to comply with it. According to the suit, the use of pesticides in some areas is already minimized or prohibited. But some actors are opposing completely this piece of legislation, and they are blocking meaningful progress towards implementation of the law. Therefore, it is essential right now that we focus on working and moving together with those political actors that are committed to constructive dialogue and to find solutions, not to block them. Now, don't get me wrong, no one is asking farmers to do something that is impossible. Farmers need solutions that are adapted to the different pedoclimatic regions in the European Union and that are adapted to the different crops that are being grown in the European Union. Farmers have been using agricultural practices for decades and more because they are the basis of agriculture. And agronomical practices are the basis of integrated pest management here. But they are not the only tool. Integrated pest management includes a whole toolbox of measures that are available for farmers. Integrated pest management does not forbid the use of synthetic pesticides. And only by applying it, we can already achieve a significant reduction in the use of synthetic pesticides with no effects, negative effects for yields. But some actors seem to be still unaware that integrated pest management can do a lot easily to reduce the use of synthetic pesticides. And they are even promoting solutions of unknown results, where there is no concrete percentage presented on the table of any pesticide reduction, and whatever is being developed is very, very far away from being put on the market. Therefore, it is extremely important right now that we focus on informing the public, informing our constituencies, informing farmers. There is a problem if farmers are not informed of this, that integrated pest management can achieve a lot in terms of reduction of pesticides. There are demo farms in Europe proving that. It is also essential that we put in place independent advisory systems that accompany farmers and help them to implement integrated pest management. This is to implement the law. As concluding remarks, what is today on the table is very simple. It is not multifactorial, it is not complex, it is not related to the war in Ukraine, nor on its consequences, be it real or not. What is today on the table has a very clear answer, is a yes or a no. And this question is, to the public and to political decision makers, are you for the respect and the application of the law? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eva. I'm raising a very important point there about IPM, the relationship with the SUR, how to strengthen this. As you said, it's been a legal requirement since 2014. I think it could be an interesting question, perhaps to put to our Commission representative later on. Jennifer, let me turn to you now. Olivia raised the point, needing new innovative tools to come through. There was already new rules adopted to increase the availability and access of biological plant protection products, but what more do you need to see to bring biocontrol to the market and into farmers' toolboxes?
Thank you. Thank you to the hosting MEPs and to the European Food Forum for this invitation to discuss the Sustainable Use Regulation. IBMA, the International Biocontrol Manufacturers Association, our members are making biocontrol, welcomes the SUR. In fact, the SUR, the Sustainable Use Regulation, is a game changer, and it's what we need to make the transition to sustainable agriculture. I would argue that biocontrol is in fact essential tool to build this sustainable agriculture. We've already been using it for many, many years. Thousands and thousands of hectares are under biological control in the EU and in the rest of the world. And in the words of Mr. Hoffer earlier on in this panel, he described biological control as the only tool that's actually left when your chemistry starts to become resistant. I don't know if somebody's moving slides on or what, but if they are, then perhaps you'd like to move on one. Thank you. But biological control is identical to nature. It regulates pests and disease. So it might be pheromones, it might be microbial alternatives, it might be plant extracts, it might be invertebrates that control other pests and diseases. When we think about agriculture, we think about food, plants, crops, productivity. But we also think about soil health, biodiversity, environment, and ultimately human health. We know that all those things are what we need to improve as part of our vision for the farm to fork. And all these things are improved immediately when we use biocontrol. So these are the benefits of biocontrol. And so this is why the SUR, the Sustainable Use Regulation, is such a game changer. And thank you to the Commission for actually putting this proposal and creating this proposal. Biocontrol, it's essential. It's essential part of pest control. It works with the ecosystem. It needs the ecosystem to work best. Olivier talked about IPM, and so did Eva talk about IPM, integrated pest management. And indeed, this is at the heart of the Sustainable Use Regulation, and biological control is at the heart of IPM. Indeed, it actually allows us to create the green infrastructure that we want to ensure we have for farms to maintain their productivity. The SUR actually enables us through many things, and there's lots of good things in the Sustainable Use Regulation. For a start, there's a definition. There's a definition of biological control. There are indicative positive targets for biological control. It puts IPM at the center of pest and disease management and provides the training for advisors. Yes, there are further things that could be adapted within it, adapting sensitive areas to allow more use of biological control or organic farming products within it, to actually reconsider the HRI that my colleague here, Eduardo, has talked about, and to put biology first in the IPM, in the integrated pest management. I want to touch on this triangle, because this triangle is actually describes all the many tools that there are in IPM, but it puts it in a hierarchy, because that's how we start to really change the game. That's how we change the mindset. We're starting with the landscape features at the bottom, in the green at the bottom of the triangle. Then move up more into the interventions that you might make that are mechanical or are physical in nature. And then you maybe need to be looking with your digital tools at what's the pest doing? What's happening? What's happening with the weather? How can I forecast what's going to be happening in terms of disease and pests? So what's my timing for intervention? And then if you need to intervene, then intervene with biological control, which is actually working with the system. It's actually enhancing the ecosystem in many cases. And then if you're really desperate, then by all means, use your chemistry. But it's a hierarchy. And we need to be putting IPM at the heart of what we do, with biological control being the essential path in it. In order to move forward with biological control and the alternatives, we do, however, need to speed up and improve our authorization process. And when we compare Europe to the rest of the world, then we are a lot slower here in Europe, and 5 to 10 years, whereas if we're looking in the US and Brazil, for example, where they have much more biocontrol in use, then it's 2 to 3 years, and that's the target we should be aiming for here. Then I might just like to move to a conclusion that biological control is essential for the Green Deal. The Sustainable Use Regulation is essential to the Green Deal, and they're game changers. We need to enable the sustainable agriculture, and we need the Sustainable Use Regulation to do it. and we need to speed up the authorization of biological control. Keep the sustainable use regulation. By all means, adapt it, but do not destroy it. It needs to be adapted and kept and progressed and concluded in this Commission. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. The question there at the end on the timeline, I think that's the crucial question here. I now would like to open up the floor to some questions. I'd also like to remind that there's a few of our MEPs sat here as well in the audience. So there's a question. No. And the whole question round. Okay, we can also do that. All right, slight change of plan. Perhaps we'll invite Claire Bury up from the Commission representative here with us today, for to hear from her about what she's taken from this event so far, and then we will have a Q&A at the end. So I'd like to welcome you up to the stage. Okay, let's do it like this. Doing a shuffling situation. You can come here. It's okay, and we can have, and we'll go to the questions at the end. Yeah. Okay. You okay? Yeah. Anyway. Okay, we're all settled in. Claire, I think fair to say, a very, very contentious proposal. There's lots of emotions here in the room today, lots of concerns. I'd be interested to hear from you your reflections about what you've heard so far on this proposal. You have, what do you have? About 8 minutes.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you very much to the organisers, to the European Food Forum, for setting this up. It's been, I think, very interesting to hear. There's been lots of very positive contributions. But before I go into those, I just want to take a step back, a little bit like Eva did a minute ago as well, just to say, what is the problem and why are we doing this? Yes, it's been controversial, it remains controversial, and I'm sure it's going to be a challenging negotiation, but why is the Commission doing this? So a quote from the EU's group of chief scientific advisors from March 2020. They said the EU food system is currently not sustainable with regard to environmental, economic and social aspects. Continuing with business as usual will significantly endanger natural resources, our health, the climate and the economy. And alongside that, I would like to add a figure, and that is 50 billion euro. And this is the estimated current annual cost of biodiversity loss due to intensive agriculture in Germany alone. And this comes from a recent German Environment Agency report. So the situation is quite dire. Now, obviously, the Commission has been very conscious of the acute public concerns around higher energy prices, agricultural input, and food prices linked to the Russian aggression in Ukraine. And of course, I've heard again from the honourable MEPs this morning about their concerns. I've also heard Madame Aguilera talk about the concerns from farmers and so on. And of course, we're very conscious of that. And change is difficult, and we have to recognise that. But I think any failure to reduce the use and risk of pesticides now is going to have long-term and potentially irreversible effects on food security in the future. So reducing the chemical pesticides will have to be progressive. Of course, it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, that's impossible, and we recognise that. The current directive, all the stakeholders agree, it's got very serious implementation, application and enforcement deficiencies, and it really doesn't put in place a framework for us moving forward now. And that's been confirmed by the Parliament Research Service, the Court of Auditors, and the Commission's own evaluation of the directive. So the status quo is not really an option. Where are we now with the negotiations? Within the Commission, yes, it was a controversial proposal. But the Commission listened, and we listened carefully, and we listened quickly, we listened fully, and we honestly acknowledged the concerns that there were around the ambition of the proposal. So already in November last year, we came with a non-paper, which has been mentioned several times this morning. And that comes with suggestions to reduce the scope of the impact in the sensitive areas and to move away from a total ban. And it responds to a number of points that have been made this morning. And I'm thinking in particular about Alexander. We can't see him anymore, but I think he's still connected. So what does this non-paper do? It proposes to differentiate very clearly between areas used by the general public and agricultural areas. And in agricultural areas, all approved pesticides, which are used in organics, and all approved pesticides used in conventional agriculture, except the most hazardous ones, would be allowed. So this is really a significant shift. And I want to be clear about how significant that shift is. So this would address some of the key concerns that we've heard this morning and that have been out there, but we hope will also minimize the negative impact on biodiversity and maintain the overall coherence of the proposal, in particular because we would still, in public areas where a number of member states have already prohibited use of chemical pesticides, we think it would still keep a good balance. Now, it's interesting that this morning the main focus has been on the sensitive areas. There are other parts of the proposal that are controversial as well, the targets. And of course, there is this question around administrative burden, both for member states in terms of reporting, but also, I think more importantly, for the farmers. We've heard a bit about that this morning in terms of independent advisory services and so on. But in all these areas, the Commission has said we are listening. Commissioner Kyriakides has said it's not a take it or leave it proposal. So we want to find a good way through. Now, just a moment on alternatives, because that's come up several times as well. Of course, the Commission is working on that in parallel. For the plant protection products, which are based on biocontrol, I think Jennifer's spoken very eloquently about that in terms of what it means in practice. We have looked at microorganisms. We've changed the data requirements for microorganisms because we want to be able to get them to market more quickly. We will look at pheromones, we will look at botanicals, but also there is some responsibility of member states here because there are blockages in their authorization of the biocontrols. You talked about how long it takes, and I think we really need to work with the member states now to try and accelerate, really adjust these processes to the risk that's involved so that we can get them to market more quickly and they can be scaled up and they can be used and the farmers can start to see a difference when they're using those kind of products. New genomic techniques, the plant breeding techniques was mentioned as well. The Commission has said that there will be a proposal on this in the course of this year, probably in the summer, to put in place a more adapted regulatory framework because we recognize that farmers need as many tools in the box as they can get, and this would be also an important improvement. So what's going to happen next? I think everybody's asking, no? So obviously we are looking forward, and I'm very encouraged by what I hear from the MEPs this morning. Obviously you still have concerns, but what I hear is that you're looking into it, you're studying, you're understanding, you're coming with your thoughts, and this we can engage with. This we can see how we can find a way through. Obviously in December, the Council asked the Commission to come with more data on some aspects of the proposal, and the Commission is considering how it can best respond to this request. And I think that certainly in the coming weeks, the Commission will say how it intends to respond, and will certainly reply within the deadline that has been set by the Council. There is already, and it's been referred to, a drivers of food security study which was published in January, which is a specific analysis around food security, which also integrates pesticides. So there is already data that the Commission has brought to the table. The Council decision, fortunately, says that work should not stop whilst this additional data is coming. So I'm pleased to say that already a couple of weeks ago and yesterday, There are very constructive discussions now going on in the Council Working Party, in particular on the integrated pest management, which you've all been talking about, because I think we do definitely need to work on that part because it's at the heart of the answer to the problems here. The Economic and Social Committee, as we heard from Mr. Hofer, is working on its opinion, and thank you for that. We look forward to receiving it. So nobody this morning, I wasn't expecting it either, has said that they don't want to reduce chemical pesticides. Everybody has said they say not to that objective. We've heard it several times now. We were in, not this room, but another neighbouring room not that long ago on the ECI with the Save Bees and Farmers, the request there to go even faster than what the Commission proposed. And I think we all agree that we have to halt the loss of biodiversity and pollinators because this has a serious impact on our agriculture and also probably on human health, we read from the most recent studies. So I think what we need to do now is to work on the how. We've more or less decided the what. How can we go about this? We're listening. The Commission is very much listening. And I think we've already reacted to what we've heard, and we are there to encourage debates, to engage constructively, but also to find solutions, and to find solutions within a reasonable period of time, because I think the problem is a pressing one. We need to safeguard our health, the health of farmers, mention as well of farmers dealing with hazardous substances, our environment, and of course, the future of agricultural production is at the core of what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, thank you very much for that. I would now like to open the floor to questions, and to do so, I'd also like to invite the MEPs from our first panel up to the stage. If you'd like to take a seat up here, and so that we can open the floor to everyone for your questions. So I can see a first question here. I can take that. If you could state your name and who your question is to, and also please be as concise as possible. You just have to press the button.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for European Food Forum for organizing this meeting. And my name is Cristina Tinelli. I represent Confagricoltura, Italian Farmer Associations. It's just some, it's not a question, maybe it's just a reflection I would like to send out. For example, I'm Italian, and in Italy, we have done integrated pest management since 1960. So we can't say that we don't have, farmers don't know integrated pest management systems. As farmer, we don't say no to the reduction of use of pesticide words that as farmers don't use. We don't say pesticide, and it is true we would like to reduce the use of these substances, but it's not always possible, as already Ms. Aguilera said. We don't understand, first of all, why 50%. Where does it come from, this percentage? It was written on the Farm to Fork, and then the commissioner herself opened up and said that there could be some changes in this legislative proposal. So this is something that really we don't understand. The council itself says that the impact assessment was not very well done, was not deeply done. And then there is also the question of imports. How can we control products coming from third country? And then concerning the drivers of food security, it is true that in the document it is written that Europe can still export, but we cannot forget that also meat is food. So the document says that we use a lot of, we feed animals, and this is not, this is something that mines our self-production. But anyway, when we do give, meat is food as well. So I mean, those drivers are a little bit confusing in this sense. And
thank you.
Okay.
If you sorry. So to maybe wrap up a question.
No, just
on the imports.
Just that samples as demonstrated, controls have demonstrated that only the 2.3% of the samples were irregular. So I mean, it means that integrated pest management works. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I didn't really hear a question there, but perhaps on that point, Eva, you'd like to come in on this? Okay, there we go.
Yes, thank you very much. So on integrated pest management, I'm going to give some data, well, not specifically in integrated pest management, but on the feasibility of reducing the use of synthetic pesticides. So I'm going to refer to a report by enshrine from 2017, which is 5 years old, a bit more. And it was carried on in 1946 agricultural exploitation of major conventional crops, and they reached a conclusion that it was possible to significantly reduce the use of pesticides without affecting yields. The average reduction was 42% without decrease or increase in rentability, and as extrapolated to the whole territory, that could be a reduction of 30%. The average reductions that are pointed in the study are 37% average in herbicides, 47% average in fungicides, 60% average in insecticides. During the hearing of the European Citizen Initiative, there was a farmer, a conventional farmer that was doing I think it was cereal crops, Jean-Bernard Lossier, and he explained that he and a group of farmers managed to very quickly reduce the amount of pesticides in their crops by 50% in only 2 years. It is my understanding that arable crops account for around, what is it, like 47% of agricultural area in the European Union. We had a wine grower talking before, and it seems to me that wine grapes account for 2.7% of the agricultural area on the European Union only. Then on the other question, on imports and dependence of imports that have been put on the table, I want to bring some interesting data. In 2021, the EU imported 138 million tons of agricultural produce, costing 150 billion euros. It has been estimated that the EU wasted that very same amount in food waste, 153.5 million tons of food every year. Most of it, 89.8 million tons, are wasted at primary production, meaning that if we halve EU waste by 2030, that could save 4.7 million hectares of agricultural waste. So maybe we have to focus on reducing agricultural waste as one of the priorities. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much. I actually have a question here online for you, Claire, and it maybe leads on a little bit from what Eva was mentioning, the ECI on the Save Bees and Farmers. There's a question here from Nina Holland asking about how the European Commission intends to respond to the 1.1 million EU citizens demanding an 80% synthetic pesticide reduction by 2030. Perhaps you can give a comment about the response from the Commission on that.
Okay, so we were present when the petition was presented here in the Parliament. And of course, the Commission will respond in the normal way. We will adopt a communication. The College always specifically adopts a communication when there is a petition from citizens. I think obviously with the Commission proposal, we've already partly responded by trying to set targets. I imagine we will look at other aspects of the petition as well and see whether there are further things that we can do to support. For example, in terms of information around integrated pest management, other flanking measures, let's say, that can be done that will try and help meet or move towards the target that citizens are very clearly attached to.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else have a question for anyone? There's a question here. Yep.
Hello, thank you. My name is André Prescher-Spildum from Friends of the Earth, Germany. My question is mainly to the Commission. So we heard a lot today that there is strong scientific evidence that this proposal is not really threatening food security, neither in Europe nor globally. But, you said you're working on the response to the request by the Council, and that the deadline is 6 months. But looking, for example, developments in the Parliament, where the Agriculture Committee is saying they will not proceed with the work on this proposal before the response from the Commission comes. So my question would be, how big are the chances that you will actually respond to the request by the Council well before the 6-month deadline? Because I think that would be really urgent to get this legislative process going. Because, yeah, time is also running out for biodiversity, but also, yeah, time-wise, because European elections are coming up.
So I can only subscribe to what you say about the need for urgency. Fortunately, as I mentioned, work continues on the proposal. Those aspects which haven't necessarily been targeted by the extra request for information, so the Commission is very much engaging on that. We have already, and Eva mentioned it and I refer to it as well, there is this Drivers of Food Security study which came out in January, which looks at the question of what impact has the Ukraine war had on food security, and whilst there are some immediate disruptive effects, the medium and potential effects were not identified. In fact, the medium and longer term effects relate to climate change effects through droughts and high energy prices, which are much more important for food security than pesticides are. I mean, that's what the first work that we've provided says. We are now looking in detail at the Council decision. If we can come more quickly, then we will. But we also have to do justice to the request. We have to look at the request and we have to see what further data and details can be provided. Obviously, within 6 months, it's difficult for the Commission to generate a whole new data set. But we will do a serious job in looking at what data is out there and how it can be put together. And if we can do it more quickly, then we will. But we will take the time that's needed to produce something serious and the best that we can do from the Commission's perspective to continue the work on the more controversial parts of the proposal.
Thank you very much. Actually, picking up on that point, on the this is a huge question mark here about the timeline, really. And I wanted to maybe put the question to you, Clara, or to one of the MEPs we have here. Given that the Agri Committee doesn't intend to hold their committee vote until September, there'll be maybe a plenary session even later. I wanted to push you maybe on the point that is there a risk that the SUR might not get adopted before the elections? Obviously, we're racing against the clock here to get this adopted before the end of the mandate. Maybe Clara, you could comment on this point.
Bueno, los proponentes no somos nosotros, son la Comisión Europea. La propuesta ha llegado cuando ha llegado. Es decir, nosotros no hay un calendario cerrado en septiembre, no hay un calendario cerrado porque tenemos que tener un acuerdo entre la Comisión Agri y la Comisión ENVI. Tenemos competencias diferentes en algunos artículos y otras compartidas. Competencia exclusiva en algunos artículos, unos y otros, y compartidas. Por lo tanto, es necesario el acuerdo. De momento no tenemos cerrado un calendario de acuerdo porque la Comisión Agri, en la que soy ponente, con la reunión de los ponentes en la sombra, y puesto que había grupos muy controvertidos con la propuesta, quedamos pendientes que nos sumábamos a la petición del Consejo para la ampliación de la evaluación que se le había solicitado a la Comisión Europea. Es una ampliación que formalmente, no sé si Claire, creo que la Comisión no ha contestado formalmente a si va a ampliar. Entendemos que sí, porque tanto ahora Claire como el comisario de Agricultura dijeron informalmente que sí, pero creo que ahí había 2 meses y el 20 de febrero es cuando tiene que contestar formalmente y luego pues hasta 6 meses que llegaría hasta junio. Nosotros ya nos hemos puesto, no obstante, a trabajar en la iniciativa. Es decir, la voluntad política, hablo yo como ponente, es trabajar y mejorar aspectos de la propuesta. Por supuesto, llegando al máximo consenso posible con los grupos políticos de la Comisión de Agricultura y, por supuesto, con la Comisión de ENVI. Es decir, no estoy hablando de trasladar únicamente mi opinión, sino mejorar la propuesta, que para mí hay muchos elementos que no me gustan y que son susceptibles de mejorar. pero mi ánimo es de trabajar. Por lo tanto, lo único que hemos dicho es que nos sumamos a esa petición del Consejo y, no obstante, hacer nuestro trabajo. Nosotros tenemos ya un hearing a final de este mes, la presentación del plan de trabajo para el mes de marzo y la propuesta. Lo que hemos dicho únicamente es condicionar los tiempos de posible entrega de esa ampliación de evaluación, que sería en el mes de junio, ver ahí los tiempos de enmiendas, para no tener cerrado un informe sin haber tenido en cuenta esa ampliación de evaluación. O sea, todo el trabajo se realizará, esa es nuestra propuesta. Después, si no hay acuerdo, la conferencia de presidentes dirá, tener toda la propuesta y que la fase de enmienda quede abierta a que conozcamos finalmente esa ampliación, por si fuese susceptible de algunos cambios. Y por eso, si esto es en junio, esto nos llevaría a una aprobación en la Comisión de Agricultura. En julio sería a lo mejor complicado, pero no hemos renunciado a ello, o en septiembre. Esos son nuestros tiempos. ENVI, sus tiempos de momento propuestos, que no están cerrados, serían que hacerlo en el mes de junio o julio. Bueno, insisto, no creo que no varía tanto. Estamos hablando de un mes o dos más, pero sí que hay una garantía. Y yo, la que quiero trasladar públicamente es, yo tengo voluntad de mejorar la propuesta, por supuesto generando un amplio consenso. Hay grupos políticos que quieren rechazar y no debatir la propuesta. Y yo quiero trabajar para rebatir ese rechazo. Por lo tanto, vamos a ver, no discutamos tanto en el mes o 2 meses, porque a lo mejor perdemos más tiempo como lo estamos perdiendo en la discusión. Esa es la idea.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There's perhaps a question for time for one last question. If anybody has one last question, one question at the back there, yeah.
Thank you. My name is Wim van der Velde. I'm here on behalf of ENSA, the European Plant-Based Food Association. I just wanted to bring attention to the statement of Mr. Hofer, who said we should focus on the most dangerous pesticides and not per se on the pesticide that is used in the most quantity. I was wondering if if Ms. Burry from the Commission would agree with that. And if so, how should that inform the targets that are currently proposed?
So at the moment, we propose to deal with pesticides more generally and the most hazardous pesticides. I'm happy to say that in relation to the most hazardous pesticides, we've made the most progress at the moment in terms of moving towards the 50% target. On the first group, pesticides were around 14%, and on the most hazardous pesticides, we're up at 26% reduction already. Clearly, efforts need to focus on those which are the most hazardous, the so-called candidates for substitution, and we take that into account as well in the non-paper that we produced on the sensitive areas. So I think we have to deal with all pesticides, but I think, yes, we can subscribe to the fact that a particular effort is needed in relation to those which are the most hazardous.
Thank you. Eva has one question. She's promised me it's very, very tiny. So go ahead.
It's a very quick answer with regards to the approach we have to pesticides. And I think it's very important to understand that what we need to tackle is exposure. And exposure can happen to each and every one of us because pesticides, for example, spread through the air, and they have been found even up to 600 meters away from the agricultural sites where they were originally used, including in playgrounds and schools. And the exposure of pesticides is not currently being analyzed, that environmental exposure of pesticides, and we are exposed to cocktails of pesticides. So we have to be very careful when we go into saying, yes, this one is not. The overall exposure to pesticides is a risk to all of us, it's a risk to pregnant women, and it's a risk also to unborn children. So this is something that we must bear in mind, that there is a real need of reduction the overall use of pesticides, synthetic pesticides in the European Union. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So we'll now bring this session to a close. So thank you very much to all of our panelists. And I'd like to re-invite Frank Bogovic up onto the stage. Perhaps also Clara, if you'd like to make some final remarks, you're also welcome to do so if you'd like to do so. But Frank, I'll turn to you firstly for your concluding remarks on everything that we've heard today in this session. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I was asked from my colleague Mihaela Šojdrova to read her conclusion remarks. She should be here, but there was one train accident on the relation from Czech Republic to Vienna, so she's not possible to be here. So I was asked to read it. Allow me first to do this. Dear guests, dear colleagues, dear organizers, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to co-host this event and for the interesting and helpful discussion between all stakeholders present, including for the views of the commissions. The exchange of views between the stakeholders is vital in the debate about the revision of the Pesticides Directive because the review brings many challenges and opportunities. First, I would like to emphasize that I am a big supporter of the overall reduction of chemical pesticides use. Second, I believe that to continue with work on the Pesticides Directive, some conditions must be fulfilled. First, the Commission has to reflect impacts on production, and in its impact assessment, the Council already requested this. We need to provide the farmers with alternative substances to chemical pesticides, like biopesticides and new genomic technique. The Pesticides Directive should set different national targets for the reduction of the chemical pesticides based on current state of use of pesticides and development in the respective member states. Fourth, legally binding targets should be introduced only once the war in Ukraine is over. Farmers and consumers are currently facing many challenges related to the war, like increase of inputs of cost for farmers, lower income of farmers, food price, inflation, etc. According to Eurostat, between 2011 and 2020, sales of pesticides in EU remains relatively stable. During this time, 11 member states recorded lower sales of pesticides. The sharpest decline was recorded in the Czech Republic, minus 38%, Portugal, Denmark, Romania, Belgium, and Ireland. And also sales that were at least 20% slower than in 2020 than in 2011. From these numbers, but also from talking to farmers, we know that there is also a general wish to lower the use of chemical pesticides. From exercise, we know how to support the precision, precision agriculture, ecological agriculture, integrated production, mechanical weed removal, consulting and laboratory testing can help already now in lowering the use of chemical pesticides. We should therefore support measures and that are interlinked. I would like to conclude with a call for not making food security only a formal slogan, but treat it as a #1 priority in the discussions around the revision of Pesticides Directive. It's necessity during times when we have war in Europe. That's our conclusion remark of Ms. Mihaela Šojdrova. Allow me to make my few sentences of my conclusion remarks. First, I will thank Luisela and the European Food Forum. I think it was very good discussion in which we open all angles of this very important regulation in which we think that there are many concerns which are connected with health of people, health of nature, soil, and also we raised also the question of food security, which is one of the three basic securities. When we connect this with war with Ukraine, allow me to not to compare it with agriculture production, but to compare with energy security, which is also one of basic energy security. We saw the case in Germany. What means if the flow of Russian gas, like conventional energy source, were stopped, and perhaps it can help also. It can be also in agri sector if we will immediately stop, like it happened in this gas supply for Europe, we can have the problem of price, we have the problem of also availability, and these concerns which are made by farmers. Why I compare this? Because I think it's very clear for everybody, for farmers, for everybody, in which directions we go, but there is not sure that we have all these alternatives. We spoke today about it today. We spoke also about a regulatory framework which needs 10 years for new things. So I think we must do a lot also on these topics. I fully agree, and I can say also, as I said, I am an apple producer, this biological control which was mentioned. This is the base for everything. The base for everything, that we go in this direction, that we really have this hierarchy, and on the top of this hierarchy, if it is needed, use of pesticides. How we see here a lot of knowledge we need innovation, and also this regulatory framework which will answer quicker than we answer today. 10 years, like colleagues from companies which are make this crop protection, it's far too much. It was heard also for other substances. So I think in this, we also heard colleague lady from Africa, and in this international trade, I think Europe really must rethink, because it will not be acceptable for European farmers that we import food from other continents in which these regulations are not accepted or are different rules. So I think it's also the Europe today, we are good exporter, but we are very big importer of some, especially proteins, other things which is connected with European agriculture. So I think we really need this response from the European Commission on this impact assessment, and the fact that Commission brought the non-paper in November before discussion started. It means that it's really necessary to rethink about all regulation and accept this responsibility from all sides, how to come closer, how to follow the procedure that we can accept regulation in this period of European Parliament. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if for genomic technique, which is it's not tabled yet, will be accepted in this period. And so I think there is a lot of work. Like Clara said, it's necessary also to work together with both committee which have the shared competences in the European Parliament, and also we follow the work on council level to understand a little more what means this technical work in the Swedish presidency. And as I said, as soon as possible to get these papers that we will answer on right direction. I agree, and I think that also farmers which brought these concerns to us also agree with this, but as we said today many times, it's necessary to prepare them alternatives, to prepare toolbox in which we will not ensure income for farmers, but food security for people in Europe. I think we speak about this, and also health for the soil, human and air, and everything what we speak about. Thanks a lot again, and thanks for all contributions to this panel.
Thank you very much, and thank you again to all of our panelists that spoke today, also to all of you in the audience, both in the room and following online. Just a reminder to get in touch with Luisella, who is here, if anybody is interested to become an EFF member. I'll also flag that there's a couple of events coming up that you might want to put on your calendars. In February, an event, EU Farm to Fork Fireside Chat on 2023 actions. There's another one coming up on food security and affordability in March. So there we go. I'll bring this to a close now. Thank you very much for listening. My name is Tasha Foote. It's been a pleasure to moderate this discussion, and have a nice day.